Alright, monologuing, just for your information. Um, this isn't a vid journal. This isn't for any particular research purposes. This is kind of just for GP general purposes. Just kind of therapeutic, but not like my vid journal. Where to begin? It's hard for me to talk at times. There are a lot of things that make it hard for me to talk because of the things I've been through. And not having a lot of people I can trust makes that even harder. So I'm just gonna try. Any of you ever have a weird dream, or a bunch of weird dreams that all seem connected, or it seems so real when you're dreaming it, and then you wake up and you go about your day and it's in the back of your mind and you're wondering, what was that about? And then, sometimes, it just seems to go away, but it sticks in your head. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe a few days later, a week later, a month later, a few years later, you find yourself in the same set of dreams, or the same type of dream, with the same kind of people in them that you haven't seen face to face in waking reality, but you keep dreaming of these same people, or the same sets of circumstances, or something to that like. Well, that's been happening to me all my life. Ever since I can remember. Back even when I was a toddler. Same people, similar faces, similar voices, different places, different times, different locations, but all related and all similar, all connected. And then I met some of these people face to face that I had been dreaming about. Yeah, that was weird. That was rather odd. One I'm still connected to by email. One I'm I'm not really talking to because his family and I had a disconnect. One thinks I'm an absolute weirdo, but loves me to pieces at the same time. I wonder if they know I'm talking about them right now. You probably do. But yeah, for me, with what I've found in my research having to do with time and space and reality, looking at the variables in connection with, say, M theory or string theory, and all that's been learned within, the past 33 years, 34 years. I'm sorry, it's hilarious, all the stuff that has come about during my brief, or what would seem my brief lifetime. Not all dreaming is waking. Not all waking is dreaming. Not all dreams are just dreams. And not all waking is just waking. If anyone out there knows what I mean. Scientifically speaking, there's so many theories out there. But, looking at it from a biblical standpoint, God sent visions to people. And, he says in different parts of the Bible that in the time and place we're in now, whichever timeline you're on or we're on or whatever, whether you even believe in the scientific fact of different timelines, different spheres of universal reality, if you will, different eras, yada yada yada. I could go into a really long list here. I'd rather not. The research never ends. I'm kind of thankful. I'd get bored. Very bored. Me bored is not a good thing. That's how shreds of paper end up on the floor from me cutting snowflakes or odd arts and crafts project that got me yelled at when I was younger. Yeah. Things turn into a mess when this one is bored. Yes, well, I got off subject. But yeah. Dreams. Dreaming of the same people, same places, same times. Different instances playing out from different variable points over and over again. And then waking up, going about my everyday life, or what would seem my everyday life. God's the one that knows, and I'll leave it in His hands. He sees the whole of the bigger picture. Even if any of us get like a little bit bigger view of things, He still has the whole of it. You know, the whole of it. We don't. He can see the whole scope of reality from outside of reality. From its very beginning, 0 point, to its very ending, 0 point. And everything in between, all the variables, all their spurs and loops, all their connectivity and disconnectivity. He can see the possibilities that get phased out. He can see the possibilities that phase back into reality. He can see everything. We can only see part of it. Scientifically speaking, we can only see part of it. Because we are finite. And even when God Himself steps into reality, like He did as Yeshua HaMashiach, like He did when He spent time with Abraham, like He did when He spent time with Gideon, you know, the list goes on and on. Even when He does that, even when He limits Himself to the reality He created for us that we messed up, some of us in bigger ways than others. We forgive you, Hitler. Some of us forgive you. I forgive you. I hope I get the same forgiveness. It was still wrong. What anyone does that's not right is wrong. But that was very wrong. I'm getting off subject. I didn't want to go into that. Oh, I didn't want to go into that. No, I didn't. But, yeah, monologuing. On dreams and reality. I would love to hear what some of you guys' takes are on it. I'm trying to think a bit. I don't like being alone. I know God's with me. I'm not completely alone. And, you know, I know His holy ones are near. You know, His angels. I know that, but not having people in my life side by side with me, working through things with their help and getting to help them through whatever they're going through, or just doing the work of the Lord side by side. It's most difficult, to say the least. There are few things I've found more difficult in existence than this. And I've had to put up with plenty of difficult things in my existence. I'm sure all of you have too. It's straight across the board. Anyone who has the breath of life in their lungs and has life in their blood, whether they accept the Spirit of God into their life or not, faces difficulties of some sort or another. There are plenty of pleasant ones. Plenty of wonderful challenges out there to face. Yeah, be of good courage. But there are plenty of those out there that to face with only God at your back, it's not pleasant at all. But it's better to suffer with Christ than to not. I mean, think of it this way. Take things from God's perspective. In the beginning, he was alone, only himself. How lonely would that be? And then he creates brothers for himself and children for himself. Yes, technically his brothers, his fellows. Yes, they're his children too, but, you know, it's a little bit different there. And things go well for a time, and then something changes. Iniquity enters in. He knew it was a possibility. He knew it was a stark and painful possibility. He knew all the possible scenarios, all the infinitely possible scenarios that could come out of him creating brethren for himself and children for himself. But he was willing to risk it. But iniquity enters in. Yeah, before I keep going, you know, he could have stayed alone. Just himself and himself and himself. Just himself. And he wouldn't have got hurt. He wouldn't have had to face suffering. He wouldn't have had to deal with everything he's had to deal with and is dealing with now and will deal with as our futures progress. But so iniquity enters in. That wonderful perfection that he had created for everyone starts changing. Iniquity enters in. Sin starts to take root. Dissension and chaos begin to be birthed. And what happens then? Some of the brethren he created for himself, and some of the children that he created for himself start fighting, start leaving, start going against everything he had created for them in their nature. And Yeah, I can suffer with him. I can ache with him on that. A third of them. And, even though it's clear by the fact that there are elect angels, that some of those that fell returned. The variable prodigal sons of the Benat Elohim. Even though there are those that returned, that repented, that now have the testimony of Jesus Christ. How painful would that be? How painful would that be? How lonely would that be? And, knowing from the start that this was a risk that he would have to plan for to be able to mend. Because he is both loving, he is love, and just, and he is truth. But he has to make every possible contingency plan to be able to save any and all who would be willing to risk either staying by his side despite iniquity and sin entering in, and those that would be willing to return. He gave free will. He doesn't take it away. If he wanted clones, if he wanted robots, if he wanted everything to be a virtual reality simulation, which this is not, this is not a simulation. A test? Oh yeah. A proving ground? Oh yeah. A simulation? No. Facts don't prove that point. This is real. Everything points to this being more than a simulation. But he doesn't take away free will. He gave it. But even when he limits himself to our time sphere, our form of reality outside of eternity, he still sees the whole scope. He only limits himself enough to where he doesn't go against his own laws, his own rules, his own statutes, his own guidelines and boundaries. The biggest one: do not violate the free will of those he has created, whom he loves, unless they take away the free will of others to the point that it is no longer lawful for them to have free will to do so. But he could have chosen to stay alone. Instead, He created all of us and all of this. Do you count yourself worth the risk? He counts us worth the risk. Or else we could suppose, and I would be glad to hear His answer on this one day. Or else we could suppose He could have contented Himself to creating things without us, with however many forms of Himself as He pleased, without injury, without harm, everything remaining perfect, sinless, spotless. He could have done that. He could have chose that instead. But He says we are worth the risk. That's pretty weighty to me. So, one of my questions is to Him and everyone else, if any of you have been pondering on it. Why does He allow us those sort of dreams? Those dreams that stay in the back of our mind when we're waking. Dreams of other places, other times. Sometimes ones just like the one we're in. And those people that aren't in our lives, that are in our dreams, tugging at our heart, pulling at our souls. Was it like that for Him before He took the risk and created us all? But yeah, these are some of the things that weigh on my mind. But I'm a thinker. That's just part of my nature. And when I'm not writing, when I'm not painting, when I'm not sewing, making clothes or bags, backpacks, whatever. Or when I'm not out there just trying to do whatever the Lord would have me do. Pray for those passing by. Or that person in the store that looks pained, or listening to someone that's just had an awful day and they need somebody to vent to, and they may not even know me. Just trying to do the Lord's work. Have all this time to think. And I just ponder on reality and the nature of it, and how we affect it, how it affects us, how we affect each other, and what God's going to do with it all at the end. This wasn't just an experiment. I know that for a fact. This is This is more than a test. This is more than a proving ground. For some, it's their first chance. For some, it's their second. I know some of you probably know what I mean. Those of you that have been given the blessing of a completely new lease on life. And for some, it may be a lot more than a second chance. Reincarnation is an incorrect view of a fact. Reincarnation? No, people don't turn into things they're not. Animals don't turn into things they're not. Unless it's decomposition. Or demonization. But incarnation, that's a fact. You are incarnate yourself. You are yourself incarnate. God incarnated, well, semi-incarnated multiple times. And then he incarnated himself. Incarnation is a fact. Reincarnation is what's in question. And what do these dreams that some of us have, or maybe most of us, I don't know. I only have a limited pool of who I can speak to face to face about these things, and I don't do a lot of talking in person unless people talk to me. I have a vow of no pursuit. I only pursue after God and the things He directs me to. If people try to connect with me, great. But I'm not supposed to pursue after people. I broke that vow once in this time and place I'm not planning on, and I have no desire to do so again. It has left me with 11 and a half years worth of worse scars. Than some of the 22 years prior to that, had been, and deep into the rest of them. Yeah, from me breaking that vow. So I don't plan on doing it again. But there's no reason I shouldn't make myself available. I'm putting myself out there for anyone who needs me. Life is lonely for a lot of people. But when I feel like this, I remember that the one who would have been at their loneliest is right here with me. He's closer than my breath. more connected to me than the blood in my veins, nearer to my heart than the muscle tissue of it. More understanding of my thoughts and thought processes than my brain cells and neurons. And he sees things more clear than the eyes he gave me. These are for distance. Mainly. And at times for hiding behind. Don't tell too many people. Because I can't hide much. Why would I want to hide? Because people can be very cruel and very unkind and lack a great deal of love for those that aren't like them. Dawn Katra, out.